Taming the High Cost of College, episode 106.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Amy Greene. She works at the University of New Mexico and she is involved in various student services there. And today we're going to talk about the B student and what it's like for the B student to try and pursue college and avenues that they can use to pursue either the local state college or perhaps the local private college as well, because there are colleges out there that specifically pursue the B student. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then in the second half, we talk a lot about pre-college programs. In other words, there are many colleges out there that are offering programs for a day, for a week, for multiple weeks. Sometimes they're on-site, on campus where you stay in a dorm. Sometimes you're just visiting for the day. But all these programs are designed for students in high school to kind of kick the tires at a particular college. It's an opportunity to test out a potential major, or it's an opportunity to test out a particular college, or both. And it's just a way for college students, high school students, to get their feet wet. So I think it's a great opportunity for most families. Now, obviously, the pricing for these types of programs is anywhere from very low cost to very expensive. So if it's something you're interested in, I would encourage you to listen and learn a little bit more and then get out there and see what's available for your students' majors, for your students' career choices. All right, let's go ahead and jump into Brad Recommends.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
All right, today on Brad Recommends, the core planning topic is essays. A lot of students are required to write essays as part of the application process for college. Now, sometimes it's relatively short essays because it's just part of an application where they want 100 words or 200 words on a particular topic like, why are you interested in our school, or questions like that, where the student needs to put together, 4 or 5 sentences in a coherent manner. Other colleges require much more. Well, they have very lofty expectations when it comes to college essays. The other area that you would see essays would be scholarships as well. It wouldn't be unusual for students, especially the students that are pursuing the higher end of schools, to be required to write 4, 5, 6 essays because they have different topics for different schools, as well as perhaps also for scholarships and other things. So essays is something that families are going to need to focus on potentially. So all families really need to understand how much essays are going to be required for the types of schools you're considering, and what is it going to take to get those essays done and done well. There is, of course, the option of getting involved with outside help or perhaps someone at your high school provides essay assistance or family members. But in the end, you're going to need to understand the essays and figure out how you're going to do them, get them done on time, etc. Now, I've got a number of episodes. Essays is a topic that we cover pretty regularly on this podcast. Episode number 65 is with Ethan Sawyer on writing essays. We have another Steve Schwartz, another essay expert, on number 60 and number 20 as well. So we've got 3 that I can pick off very quickly, and there's probably a couple more where we talk about applications as well. So there's a lot of great resources in some of the past podcasts, so you can go back and listen to those particular podcasts, or have your student listen. If they're the ones that are ultimately going to have to write the essays, maybe they should be the one that learns about the essay. And then for our optional topic, I want to touch briefly on internships. I think internships are a great way to help pay for college, as well as get additional experience in your field. So there are colleges out there that advertise and are a great source of internships as part of their curriculum, so to speak, where not only will they give you the coursework, but they'll also provide internship opportunities. and perhaps even require intern opportunities in order to graduate. So I think internships is a great opportunity for some. And again, you need to understand how internships work and whether or not they're applicable to your particular field. And then decide, again, if you're going to pursue internships either independent of the college or if you're going to choose a college that requires internships. And again, we have a great podcast episode if you go back to number 71 with Charisse Kent, where we talk about internships. So internships may be something you're interested in. And of course, essays is something you definitely need to understand and determine whether or not that's in your future. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the main interview with Amy Greene. All right, today I'm sitting down with Amy Greene. She is the Program Supervisor for Continuing Education at the University of New Mexico. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So before we jump into talking about some of the things that you're the expert on, so to speak, can you tell us a little bit about your history? I know you've been in continuing education for a while and kind of how you came to be doing what you're doing.
My pathway to working in higher education started in graduate school, and I had some great mentors there at Suffolk University who connected me with working with students. And so the majority of my experience has been coordinating community engagement, community service, and service learning with college students in the kind of student life and student services realm. And recently, in relocating to New Mexico from the Boston area, I've taken up continuing education. And so now I'm coordinating career training for adult students, as well as youth programs for ages 5 through 17.
All right, great. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about, some of your areas of expertise, which would be kind of working with the B student, so to speak, not the high flyer that is going off and doing great things, but there's a lot of families out there that have students that are strong students, but they're not the kids that are competing for Harvard. They're the kids that are going to go to the local state school or the local community college or maybe the local private school, and they really are struggling with, is college the right path? And if so, which path? Do we live at home and go to the community college? Do we get off and get a 4-year degree at the local state school? If you're a parent that's working with that type of student and you're in the sophomore, junior year, what kind of things can you start doing to kind of lay the groundwork for college or the college decision, even if maybe college isn't going to happen?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I would tell that parent is that it's okay. And I would tell the student as well. One of my favorite types of students to work with, at one point I was also an academic advisor, were those students that came in, hadn't been as strong in high school. We're very excited and thankful to be in college, and possibly even undeclared in their major. They were there, they had made it. And I would tell them it's okay because you're the most honest student I've ever met, sitting here saying, I'm glad to be here. I'm not sure where I'm going. Because that's the reality, unless you're really on a career track path like dental school or pre-med, most students arriving at college have a lot to discover about themselves and their path. And so getting in and getting there, there are definitely some things to consider. And from my own experience, the thing that I wish I had known when I was sitting there with my parents trying to figure out my path is that there are a lot of options. And just like when you're looking for a job down the line, it's about that mutual fit. So, sometimes we get kind of dragged in by the name recognition, or certain brands of certain schools. But the reality is you can get an amazing experience. And there are so many options out there. And so shopping around and thinking about kind of your personality and what your strengths are is really the way to go. So even if you're a B student and you feel like you're generally, you haven't committed or really excelled in one particular area, you're still going to be able to find a school that is exciting to you and that they most likely would be excited about you being there as well. I went to a larger state school and I chose that school because of the major. So I knew that I wanted to study marine biology, which I think is pretty common. That's a kind of an attractive major. It sounds fun, like maybe I'll swim with the dolphins and that kind of thing. Right. And there were a few schools in my area that were well known for marine biology, the University of Rhode Island being the school that I eventually chose. And thinking about that school, the major was what drew me in. But I didn't really consider a lot of the other factors of what life would be like for 4 years living there and studying, even though you go on the college tour. And so I wish that someone had sat with me and said, think about your residential situation. Think about student life. What support services are going to be there for you? How are you going to be successful? And who's going to care? What are the relationships going to be like? So I would encourage the families who are kind of concerned, about their sending their child off to college, to think about the range of options. I thought at the time when I was looking at colleges that most of the private universities were out of my reach financially. So, I came from kind of a middle class working family, but I was the oldest, the first to go to college. And I had a feeling, I needed to be smart and work in partnership with my parents to find a really good deal,
Right.
In terms of tuition. I was trying to be respectful of that. And so I ruled out automatically a lot of the schools that, some of my peers at my high school were applying to and getting excited about. But what I realized later in working at those private institutions, I worked at 3 different private universities in the Boston area of varying sizes and focus, is that the sticker price that you see right off the bat is not always what you're going to pay out of pocket. And in fact, I think a lot of the students that were attending some of those private universities where I was working were probably paying less per year than I was to go to the University of Rhode Island, as a out-of-state student at a public university, even with a scholarship that I was able to obtain. So the value, and what you're actually going to spend really varies based on the institution. And a lot of the private institutions seem to have more institutional money to give in terms of financial aid than maybe a state school that's, dealing with state funding and budget, considerations, or always feeling a little tight themselves. And I wish someone had said that to me, don't rule it out, because you may find that admission is, maybe a little easier. A lot of the smaller private schools that are not as well known as some of the big brand names, are really seeking students. They're working on their enrollment goals as well. And so, there's an opportunity there. Maybe you could negotiate a really wonderful deal, and still have that private school experience that you think would be a good fit for you and have those support services there.
Exactly. And I always tell families that there are schools who target different students. Yes, so there's the Harvards and Yales of the world that target the top-notch kids, but there's also schools out there that are seeking out and expecting to bring in a lot of the B students who aren't going to make it into Harvard, or even some of the others, maybe even the local state school, but that is their target market, and they know how to work with those types of kids and educate them and get them on a career as well.
Yes, definitely. In attending as an undergraduate, attending a public institution, what I know now, what I didn't realize then, because I really loved my college experience, is that a lot of those wraparound support services and opportunities to build relationships, references for the future, relationships with faculty and staff, I really didn't connect that much with staff and faculty at the institution, because their focus is more on research and, publishing, and there aren't going to be as many maybe student support staff available to you. The focus of these larger institutions really is research, which is phenomenal if you want to get in and, be involved in a research laboratory and you have really, a good idea that that's in your future. But what I saw was working at LaSalle College, for example, they were exactly targeting the students you're talking about. And I was so inspired by those students that I was working with and supporting. I had one individual who I am still colleagues with to this day. He's graduated, a really fabulous alumni of LaSalle College. And he came in as a C student from high school. He was in a freshman seminar that I was teaching. And I had encouraged him to get involved in the community engagement office where I was working at the time, because we had jobs available to work in the community, tutoring and mentoring elementary school students. So he said, okay, I need a job. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. My parents are telling me to get a job. He was also commuting from Boston. And so he got involved in our office, and we had, this really amazing space, opportunity for students to hang out, couches, and, we made it very welcoming there. And so he really got involved, wound up taking on leadership positions within the community engagement programs that we were offering. And he was an entrepreneurship major. And so he decided to kind of combine his major with this community work that he was doing in the Boston area where he had grown up. And when he graduated, he actually has created his own nonprofit organization. He's supporting youth who are experiencing homelessness in the Boston area and applying, everything he learned in his classes as well as in the volunteer work he had done with us to make this happen. And he's super inspirational to me. He even created a small scholarship program for C students. Mm-hmm. He's fundraising right now for that through his organization, Samaritan Steps. And, for students like him, who everyone says, maybe college is not for you, or you're not going to do anything, that impressive. You're not motivated enough. But so he's trying to help those students with books and supplies to make sure they can achieve. And because he's really proof of what can happen if given the space, and that little bit of support and encouragement. A student in another environment may not have had all those opportunities and may not have, rose to the challenge, but in the right environment, I think it's really possible to see a C student from high school really thrive and become a leader and unlock their own passion and excitement, for their future.
Absolutely. So say again, what was the name of the program that he got involved with that you were running?
So he was involved in the America Reads program, okay, which is a federal work study opportunity. Colleges and universities, in order to receive and distribute federal work study in general, have to make sure that at least, I think it's about 10% of the jobs that are offered to students are community-based work study. So we were coordinating that component, and the America Reads program was the kind of bulk of those jobs. And the students, we had almost 100 students who were going out into the community and tutoring elementary school students after school, right, twice a week. Mm-hmm.
So as a category, if you were, let's say I'm visiting a college and what you just mentioned interests me, mm-hmm, what would I ask for, or what department would this be housed under? Because I don't think most people that are visiting have any idea of this type of thing. So what are you looking for? The community outreach area, job study, or?
That's a great question. So at this stage in the game, I would say for the past maybe 10 to 15 years, there's been a trend to really expand and make sure that each college and university has an office like this. So ours was called the Center for Community-Based Learning. I've worked at the Office for Community Service at another institution. I've seen Centers for Community Engagement as another name. Sometimes it falls under the heading of Service Learning, which is more academically based community service. But they're definitely, each university should be coordinating or offering community-based work study opportunities to students. So that would be something you could inquire about with, in a financial aid presentation when you go on a tour. Mm-hmm. They should be aware of what community-based work study jobs are available. Okay. And those are, in a way, it's actually like getting a jump on an internship or, an opportunity to get experience like that, because you could start your freshman year in some of these jobs and you're building references. You may actually be working out in the community at a nonprofit. Some of them are literally based at nonprofit organizations. So you're earning a wage, you're helping to support yourself through college, and you're getting that fantastic experience that maybe and hopefully is aligned with your major. So instead of waiting to, start your internship later on, you can jump right in there.
Right.
And I think, community service and community engagement is something really any student can be involved in. You don't necessarily have to be stellar academically in order to contribute to your community, to make a little bit of time and space in your life for that. And the people who work in these offices, like myself and my colleagues, are really good. We're like the matchmakers
Right.
of figuring out between the student, maybe a course they're taking that it's a requirement for, and the community organization, figuring out the best match. So everyone's going to be really excited about the opportunity. So you're getting experience that makes sense and aligns with your career development. And you're also really making a difference in your local community. So.
Right. So that was based around work study, but I would assume that there's also programs out there that might be more of a volunteer and or maybe just not tied in with federal work study, that they're just a typical job.
Yes, definitely.
With all this kind of stuff, what all this, and again, the matchmakers, so to speak, I would say 95% of college kids, when they show up as a freshman, don't know that there is this matchmaker. So again, I'm trying to reiterate, how do you find your matchmaker at a particular college? Would you start in the financial aid office, start in student services?
I think starting with student life, student activities, it tends to be organized in one of two places. It's either within the academic coordination. So perhaps this is really focused on helping faculty integrate community service and service learning into a course. So let's say you're an accounting student, maybe an accounting faculty member is going to have you help prepare taxes for local low-income families. And the matchmaker office, right, would help the faculty member to create and design that project. Or it could be organized within student activities or student life. And it's more about student clubs and engagement. So most campuses have, community service type club that you could join, and you'd meet with other students who are interested in doing the similar kind of activities. There are even residential focused opportunities. So you may wind up living in a community service house or a community service floor of a residence hall. And I was an advisor for a community service house at one institution. So all the students living there committed to do, a certain number of hours of service each month or each year. And they did those projects together. It's a really great way to connect and bond with other students, especially if you're a little nervous about going to college, you don't know anybody. This is a really nice, easy way to get to make friends and build a really positive social network on campus. And I would occasionally have parents call our office to say, my daughter is just sitting in her dorm room. She says there's nothing to do. Can you reach out to her? Can we get her connected? Can she have an appointment with you? And that was my greatest joy. I mean, working with the students, it still is my favorite part of my job. And that's the beautiful thing about going to a college like that has all these opportunities. They literally have staff members who are there just waiting for you to walk in, make an appointment, so they can support you on your pathway. And I think a lot of students go through their whole career. I know I did. I spent 4 years at URI and I did not tap into any of those services. Like you're saying, I was not even aware they were there. So it starts by just asking those questions, where can I get involved? How can I get out in the community? And I'm sure someone will more than happily help you connect and get involved.
Right. So now if prior to college, if we've got a high school, sophomore, junior, senior, and we're in the process of getting ready for college, maybe we're not exactly clear which college or what path at this point, whether maybe it's community college, maybe it's full-blown 4-year college. What are things that can help us make those decisions as far as there's things like college camps and some colleges out there now are offering kind of summer program prior to college starting to help kids get up to speed. Can you talk about some of those types of services that are out there that kind of take you from where you are to kind of get you prepared for college or helping you make the decisions and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the smartest things you can do if you're really unsure about maybe a potential major or the type of institution that you're interested in, large or small, urban, rural, all these kind of factors that you're weighing. There are so many programs out there, like you mentioned, whether there are summer programs, camps, maybe a year-round regular meeting kind of opportunity. And usually they're organized through the college or university. So I would start there. Let's say you have a handful of schools and a handful of majors that you're thinking about. I would just literally get on Google, right? And start looking through those colleges' websites to see what they have under the categories of outreach would be a key term to look for, or pre-college experience, or college experience camps. When I arrived here at the University of New Mexico and now overseeing youth programs, we have camps and classes for kids ages 5 through 17. And a few of them were opportunities to get onto campus and experience majors, but they weren't really organized that way. And so one of the first things I did here was to reach out to various academic departments and to see if their faculty or graduate students would be interested in hosting a summer camp. So these are day programs, but some colleges offer residential experiences too. So you can go and stay for a whole week on campus, be totally immersed in the college experience while also learning from faculty or students. And so I've developed partnerships with a handful of academic departments, like our engineering school, the architecture department, in order to build these programs. And so we've been really successful. We have a handful of these exciting camps during the summer, pretty well attended, 15 to 20 students attending. They come for a week. They're taught by graduate students or actual faculty from those departments. And they're very project-based, very hands-on, but they also incorporate that college experience. So sometimes it just takes that fear and intimidation out of the process, because you've now literally sat in a classroom at the university, gotten a little taste of the major that you're considering. And it's a really great way to know if you want to spend the next 4 years, doing that same type of thing. And in a lot of ways, if you attend that camp and you realize you really didn't enjoy it, or there were aspects of it you didn't particularly like, you've just saved yourself, a huge amount of money and time, and maybe you can look in a different direction. And on the flip side, if you love it, now you've got this launch point, right? So we've called that program Global Learning Launch, and the camps are organized under that heading. And so we're hoping to expand and offer more options for local students to engage in that. Well, the big reason that I wanted to create that is because I had actually gone through a similar program myself. I knew that I wanted to study marine biology, as I had mentioned, and I thought, let me actually go in and try this. So there was a camp during the summer. I believe I went between my junior and senior year. It was a week-long residential program at a school on Long Island in New York. And it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. You're staying in a dorm for a week with students. You're making friends. We were out snorkeling in the bay and sampling algae. It was so much fun. And it just got me really excited for college. It gave me that motivation, little extra boost, to work on college applications and scholarship applications, because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I couldn't wait to spend more time engaged in that work. So I think it's a great idea. There's programs offered all around the country, and this might be an opportunity. Let's say you have your heart set on one of those, big brand name schools, like you mentioned earlier, I'm thinking about Harvard or Yale. They offer these summer programs as well. And so this could be a great thing to add onto your college application portfolio, that you've attended and successfully attended one of these programs. So I would check those out for sure.
So these summer programs come with a tuition, and I know some of them can be very expensive, especially at the elite schools. I'm assuming they're not all that way. What can you tell us about what they cost?
So the tuition definitely varies. A day program like ours might be just a few $100s for the week, whereas some with the residential component, or maybe our longer term, several weeks in a row, are going to be upwards of a few $1,000s. I do still think those are a great investment, considering that you're going to save, and hopefully from making a 4-year investment, that maybe isn't a good fit. However, there are a lot of low cost or free programs that are out there. Depending on the major that you're interested in and your background, you may qualify for. Usually these are application based. And so you're going to need to, sort of be aware that they're out there and apply with the deadlines. Typically, for a summer program, you're going to be looking in December or January for applications for programs like this. But if, let's say, you're a student from an underrepresented group in a particular major or at a particular institution, for example, a woman who's interested in studying engineering, you may qualify for certain programs that are targeted towards increasing, the number of students from that group or identity within that department. And so they're really looking to recruit. And so as a result, they're offering free or low cost opportunities to come onto campus, maybe meeting regularly during the school year. Once a week you would come to the college campus and work on your college essay, for your application, or understanding financial aid better. And sometimes they're similar to what I was describing, with a intensive summer program where you're going to come and stay either maybe the summer right before enrolling in the college or a few summers before. So those are great opportunities that are available to you. Both, I would look in your local area, the local institutions nearby, as well as some national programs that you may qualify for. And these are amazing opportunities. I think the more time you can spend on a college campus engaged in the work before you arrive, the more prepared you're going to be, the more of like an informed consumer you're going to be. Because just like with anything else, you want to make sure this is a good fit. So even if you are that B student or you're not really feeling confident in your ability to apply and get into college at this moment in time, it's still worth thinking about in that way, that you're trying to find that best match, that best fit, and not, where you're going to be as excited about going there as, they are to admit you. Right. And so it's really important to not discourage yourself, because there are so many options out there that, and trying out the college or the institution before you go, I think is a really smart move, because I think the key for me in all of this with higher education is that you want to go somewhere where you're going to build these relationships. That's what's going to really launch you into your future. If you just go to college and you stay in your dorm room, go to class and never talk to anyone, you're not going to get the most out of your higher education degree. And that was really obvious to me actually in graduate school. The light bulb went on for me because I had amazing mentors who connected with me. I'm still, in touch with this day. They've become my colleagues, and they saw something in me. They said, you would be amazing doing this type of work, and we're going to help you do that. And you have to be open to that, or show up so that you can actually have somebody get excited about you and help you connect with those opportunities. So right, exactly. That would be my key piece of advice. And you can start that even before you're enrolled in the college, because some of these students that I'm meeting who are coming to the pre-college camps, they may wind up enrolling at UNM, and may wind up working for me one day, helping with some of the other camps that I run. So, those relationships in life are really, really the key. And, and a lot of the things I've mentioned, whether community service or the camps, or in choosing the college, that's what I would be looking for. Where do you feel the most comfortable? Where do you feel like you could jump right in and you would feel confident and comfortable to make those relationships, to talk to faculty or to, take advantage of the staff support that's there. Yeah.
So, I guess two thoughts flash through my brain in that. One is the overall price of college has gone up. And there was a time, especially during the recession, when there was a lot of disenfranchised college kids who essentially their story kind of went, well, I did what I was told. I got good grades in high school so I could get into a good college, and I got good grades in college. And now I feel like I'm stuck. It's like the world owes me a job, and I did everything by the book, and it's just not working out for me. And sometimes these kids were, drowning in student loan debt or other issues. And I think that what you just mentioned is a key component in that you need to first of all, take advantage of the relationships and the networking, whether it's with your peers as students or faculty or staff as mentors, or relationships that the college has with the local business. I mean, there's all kinds of different relationships that you can take advantage of. As parents, we probably get that a lot more than the typical 17, 18-year-old who doesn't realize that the lead for their first summer job came from someone they met in high school, and the lead for their first real job came from someone they met in college.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is there's a great book out there by Kat Klaus called Putting College to Work, or something along those lines. It's a book I've been recommending that talks about the whole process of, yes, you certainly want to get a degree, but you want to do a lot more than get a degree. And what are those other things, like building the relationships and plugging into the alumni network and plugging into student services, plugging into the placement office to help find internships and or your first, career job.
Exactly. I would always tell students, your tuition dollars are paying for me to be here. It's not that I work for you necessarily to a complete extent, but that I am here to serve you so that you can have the best experience possible. So what do you want to do? What do you want this experience to be like? And the students that really heard that and took me up on that offer created opportunities for other students to even be involved. They took the bull by the horns, and really, it was incredible to see. I had one student who started out volunteering with us we had a mentoring program that worked with families affected by domestic violence. So once a week, the families would come to campus, and we would provide childcare for the kids so the moms could meet with their mentors. And she wound up taking classes on domestic violence, wound up, really gearing her studies towards understanding, working within human services, and graduated and had no problem, finding a job within that realm, child and family services essentially, and social work. And she just took that leadership role. She saw opportunities to create space for other students to even be engaged and involved. It was really fabulous and inspirational to me. And so I know that it's possible if you show up and you say, I'm interested in this, that you can not only benefit yourself and your community, but also other students that are present as well. And I would always tell them, it doesn't matter. You don't have to wait. You can do that your freshman year. You can just come right on in and tell us what you're interested in, and we can help you with that.
Right.
But thinking about the students who maybe have graduated and are not sure where to go next, or, struggling a little to find that perfect first job. That's been the exciting thing for me about working in continuing education. And I've really enjoyed working with some of the adult students who maybe are returning to the workforce or considering a career change, or young people who just graduated from UNM, but aren't quite sure what their next step is. I've had a lot of students who were thinking about law school, but wanted to try the field out. And so they've been engaged in our paralegal training program or legal assistant courses that we offer through continuing education. And those certificate programs are a lot lower cost, something that you could do potentially as an alternative to a 4-year degree. You could come on in and, within 2 or 3 months, add a certificate to your resume. That's going to hopefully boost your overall candidacy for certain jobs or positions. So it's exciting to be able to offer those career training opportunities to folks who maybe have been out of the workforce for a while as well and are interested in getting back in. But definitely I've had some parents who've come in and said, my son is just at home. He graduated from high school and I really want him to do something. What do you have? I helped one mom recently, in that situation, and we went over all the different programs together. This was over the phone. And finally, I was telling her about our personal trainer certificate program, which again is just a couple of months, maybe $2,500 total tuition to get certified. And she thought her son would love it. And he did. He wound up enrolling and engaged in that program. So, there are other pathways as well that most larger, state institutions probably have similar continuing education opportunities, like the ones I'm talking about, that might be a nice, almost like a gap year program, thinking maybe you want to work for a little bit, or your student's not quite ready for college. They might be a nice, it's kind of short-term education plan to keep students engaged and motivated and working towards a goal. So I would definitely look at those. And a lot of the programs are online as well. So you can take those, they're self-paced, and you can take them, within the deadline, but kind of at your own convenience within your schedule.
Right. So a question I want to back up for a little bit is, you had mentioned you got these various programs. I know it's very popular in the sciences. So going somewhere, you have the opportunity to get yourself into an engineering lab, a chemistry lab, a biology lab, doing medical type things. They're all very popular camps and or summer programs because they can be very hands-on and that kind of thing. But beyond those core ones, what other things are you guys offering? Is there things around, business, entrepreneurship, accounting? Which ones are you guys offering, and what other ones are you aware of?
Sure. I think leadership is definitely going to be a track that you'll see within those pre-college programs, whether leadership purely or environment, leadership in business, leadership in entrepreneurship, or leadership in social science, combined together. And so I know that for some students, like we started out talking about, maybe the B student may not necessarily consider themselves a leader, right? But I would say, still consider those leadership programs. That may be a way to jumpstart your leadership abilities, as I do think that leadership can come in a variety of forms, and it's not always that type A personality, that can be the leader. There's a lot of different personalities that make really wonderful fit within that leadership category. So that would be one thing to look for. We are offering an architecture program that I'm really excited about. We had one that was themed around 3D printing, which was super popular. Everyone was really excited about that because they came into the lab at the architecture building and were able to create and design their own 3D structure. So that was really fun. And we are working in partnership with our Innovation Academy, which is something that UNM is doing in conjunction with the community, has an innovation lab. This is for entrepreneurs, startup, kind of like a Shark Tank type model, I think would be the most comparable thing most people have heard about. And so we are hoping to offer that for high school students as well, to come in, and that combines, a lot of things: communication, marketing strategy, business plans, and working in teams, real world skills that you're going to need in almost any job. So we're excited about that as well. So I do think there's a variety. It's not just in the sciences, like you mentioned. And there are opportunities to even travel internationally, which I definitely would look into. That's a potential to really kind of find that spark for your student. So if you're able to, if you have the means to consider a program that travels abroad, there are ones that are organized around service. So you could go and maybe teach English or volunteer at an organization or foundation internationally. There are language programs. There are programs, focused on leadership, like I mentioned, or on maybe policy, right? Like, cross-cultural communication. Those programs are super exciting. And to be able to spend a week or two abroad as a high school student, you're going to test out your independence. You're going to have an opportunity to immerse in another culture and to really better understand yourself and how you fit within the global context, which is a big theme that you're going to see, in college. They're always talking about this global citizenship, right? So that would be fantastic. If you are going to invest in a pre-college program and you have the means to, I would not rule out, looking abroad as well. It could be a fantastic, something that would, like I said, kind of ignite that spark in maybe a B student, to see, really find that passion that they could carry through into their college experience.
All right. Well, you've given us a lot of great information, and I really appreciate it. If people want to learn more about what you're doing there at University of New Mexico, is there ways that they can get in contact with you or the department?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk with anybody that has questions or wants more information. Our website is ce.unm.edu, and there's information on there, everything from our yoga classes to career training to the youth programs. And we also have general emails that you can use to get in contact with us. We have career training at unm.edu or youth at unm.edu. So if you have questions about the youth program or the career training courses that I mentioned, and like I said, a lot of those are online for the career training component. So those could be taken anywhere, and they really span the spectrum from human resources, to legal fields. So I'd be happy to connect with anybody. And like I said, build those relationships. I'm always excited to talk to people about collaboration and opportunities. So I appreciate the chance to talk with you, Brad.
I appreciate it as well. All right, that was a great interview with Amy. Hopefully you learned a ton. I know I did. As always, show notes are available. You can go to tamingthehighcostofcollege/106. That's where the notes for this particular episode are, including links to the Brad Recommends material and information about Amy. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Feel free to give us a call or send us an email, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. That's all we have this week. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.